Aloha. Good morning. I'm Beth Iwata, Vice President of Development and Marketing here at the Japanese Cultural Center of Hawaii. We're delighted to welcome all of you to the JCH today for a talk story with the editors of A Resilient Spirit, Claire Sato, a retired school librarian and longtime volunteer here, and Violet Harada, a professor emeritus in the Library and Information Sciences program at the University of Hawaii. Before we begin, allow me to share a few housekeeping items. Restrooms are available outside, so as you exit the gift shop, turn right, and the restrooms are at the end of the hallway near the dojo. If you parked in the garage, please be sure to pick up your complimentary validation sticker at the check-in table. Copies of A Resilient Spirit are available for purchase at the gift shop, and we're offering a special buy one, get one 25% off discount today. It's great for gift giving. And then once the talk concludes, the editors will be available to answer questions as well as sign copies of the book. All right. So 27 years ago, in 1998, a phone inquiry to the JCCH sparked a 4-year journey to rediscover Honouliuli and other internment sites in Hawaii, and a commitment to forever preserve the history of Hawaii's confinement sites. In 2002, a watershed moment occurred when a team of JCCH volunteers, led by Jane Kurihara and Betsy Fuji Young, began to identify the location of each site, resulting in the discovery first of Honouliuli. We have an exhibit here about that, and it also inspired a lot of resources that the JCCH developed from there on. One of them is A Resilient Spirit. A Resilient Spirit was first published in 2018, and we decided to publish it again this year in commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the designation of Honouliuli as a National Historic Site. The book was inspired by Claire. As a volunteer in the Resource Center, she was hearing the stories of the internees, and the more she learned about them, she felt that their stories needed to be shared broadly. She shared her feelings, her thoughts with her friend Vi, and two of them with their librarian backgrounds, of course, they decided to write a book. And so that's all I'm going to say. I'd like we're here to hear them, tell their stories. But yeah, so it's my honor to introduce Claire Sato and Vi Harada.
Thank you all for being here. Is the voice okay? We're just doing a little sound check here. Okay. We really appreciate the fact that you took the time to come and listen to our talk story. We're hoping to share some of the journey that we went on to get the book done and some of the stories from the book. I need to apologize first of all to you because I'm like Linus in the Peanuts cartoon. I need a security blanket, and that's why I have my computer in front of me. It's not real warm, but it'll help give me security. As Beth told you, this whole thing started because I go into the resource center, and there would be Jane Kurihara, and she was long time, she'd spent the bulk of her time as a volunteer working on Honouliuli, and she has a sparkle in her eye when she's excited and she wants to tell you something. And she would Claire, come, do you know what I found? And she would tell me stories about what she had found. And what was making her most excited and made me the most excited was these stories were told in the words of the internees themselves. It was history at its finest being told by those who experienced it. I got really excited about it. And she would keep telling me these stories. I couldn't, of course, remember the stories, but I remember the concept of history being told by the people themselves. On a trip to Japan with Vi and her husband, Wayne, on one of our long trips to Kyoto to Tokyo or something, I started telling Vi about these stories. And I told her, you know, it's so sad and it's so frustrating that we have all these wonderful stories that will keep history alive, and it'll get locked up in the archives of the RC, because who's going to hear them? One or two may come out in a presentation, but who's going to hear them? Okay, Vi is a really patient person, and she listened to me go on and on and on and on and on, until finally she said, why don't we write a book? And that is how this whole idea of a book was born, so to speak. Vi will spend a few minutes now going over the journey that we took in order to get the book published. Okay, Vi?
Oh, Claire gives me too much credit. She really was the inspiration for this, you know. Before I talk a little bit about the journey of actually putting a book together, I just want to say that I'm a Sansei, third generation Japanese American, and I have to be very honest. Growing up here in Hawaii, I was never even aware of the incarceration experience on the West Coast. I honestly didn't know about it. And then I actually went on to become a high school teacher. And this was in the late 1990s. And I picked up the history textbooks that were being used at that time. Now, most of you look much younger than me, but I have to tell you, those textbooks were damn heavy, 700 pages. Open the book up. There might be one little paragraph somewhere tucked in a chapter that said something about the internment, not incarceration, internment experience on the West Coast. So easy to ignore, to not even know about it. And then from teaching in high school, I went on to teach at the college level. And one year I was teaching a course in the literature tied in with the Japanese American experience during the war years. And after that session, several students came up to me. Now, these are students who are master's candidates at the university preparing to become library science professionals. They came up and they said, we never knew about it. We never knew about this. So when Claire tells me on this long train ride to Japan, you know, these stories got to be heard, there was a moment of epiphany for me, because I thought, hell yes, we got to do something about this, make a small contribution. So when she and I came back, we talked to Carol Hayashino. Carol was then leading the Japanese Cultural Center, and Carol, bless her heart, she was 500% behind us doing this book. So then Claire and I, we jumped up in joy, and we said, great. And then the next minute, we stopped and asked ourselves, so where do we begin with a book? Lucky for us, there is a resource center right across this courtyard. Do some of you know about it, the Tokioka Heritage Resource Center? I see a few nods. If you don't know about it, it is open today. You can go visit afterwards. But it is a small facility, but such a treasure house of resources. So the first thing she and I did was we went there, and we started to look through the print collection. There are books there, and we discovered some things that we never knew existed there. I brought one with me. This one here is called Family Torn Apart, and it is a biographical account of one individual who was incarcerated. It's Mr. Ozaki. And there are several other books like this. There's one on Suike Furuya. There's another one by Yasutaro Soga. Now, these are real full-length, very detailed descriptions of what it was like to be torn from the families and taken to these camps. But as Claire says, how many people actually stop to read these books? And so we started to realize we have to take from these books some of the nuggets and make them available to a larger audience. One other thing that we really loved, we came across this little book. It is called Poets Behind Barbed Wire. And it really is the poems that were written by these individuals these individuals that were incarcerated during the war years. It is so moving to look at something like this. So we knew we had the print collection. But even perhaps more valuable than the print collection itself is the archival collection in the Resource Center. Now, not many of us look at archival collections, so I asked Devin, who is the manager there, if I could borrow one of the boxes to bring here today. This, what I have here, I'm not going to lift it, it's heavy. This is an archival box. You can come up and look at it later. On the outside is a label of who the individual is that, you know, the contents are about, or the event. This particular box happens to be about an individual named Harry Urata. Some of you are nodding because the name is familiar to you. He was incarcerated, very prolific musician, well-known in the community. When you open these boxes, and these archival boxes are called phase boxes, what you will find inside is meticulously done work where folders are with all kinds of information. So when you pick up an archival box, it might have memoirs, it can have personal diary accounts, it can have letters. If they're poets, poems. If they were artists, illustrations, newspaper clippings, and so forth. It is such a rich treasure trove of information. So here are all these archival boxes. Here are the print collections. So then Claire and I looked at each other and said, oh God, where do we start? Yeah. And that's where people like Jane come in, Jane Kurahara. Institutional memory for the Resource Center. God, if we didn't have her, I don't know where we would have been. At any rate, she would point to all these things. So we started to cull from these things. And then we started to read. We started to photocopy. Claire took over the photocopying. As we photocopied, we realized we had to organize this stuff. You know, we are librarians after all. So we started to create manila folders, yeah? This one I just tagged December 7th, but it might be an event, it might be something else. And we started to populate these with the excerpts we were pulling out from the materials. But as we were doing this, Claire and I quickly realized we also had to figure out, of all these things we were putting in there, were there some that we really felt were going to make a difference, that we wanted it in the book? So we started doing something called tagging, just little sticky notes. Put sticky notes on these so they, well, this one is not the one, but anyway, this is what we did, and we stuck them back into the folders. Now, besides being at the Resource Center, I think, Claire, we spent like 2 days a week at the Resource Center. And we did that for 2.5 years. You know, we're volunteers. This is a passion project. We're not there every day. So we're doing this, and then now that we had folders, we would take them home with us and look them over. So now we told ourselves, what criteria are we using to do the tagging? And there were 4 important criteria that we were using. The first is, did it have some kind of emotional tug for us? Like, this was really sad, or this was really happy, or this was really alarming. And we would put these sticky notes. And Claire, I still remember, you know her, she would come the next day after and she would tell me, oh, Vi, I read a letter. And you know, I read two sentences and I started to tear up. I couldn't continue. I had to wait a while to finish the letter. Whenever Claire said that, that was a keeper. We put a tag on it. So we went through this, you know, 2.5 years of doing it. That was the first criterion. The second criterion was the fact that this was not going to be a book for scholars. This was going to be a book that anybody could pick up and find some connection with. So that human element was important. So it was like, you know, what did it feel like when you just, on December 7th, the FBI show up and take you, and they don't say anything to the family? What was that feeling like? And when they were at these prison camps, because those were really prison camps with barbed wire around them, what did they feel? What did they do all day? What did they even eat? Is the human element that we wanted. And the third criteria was some historical significance. You know, one of the things we discovered was that the government had transcripts of the interrogations that they did at Sand Island. Reading those transcripts for me was gave me so much anger. And the reason for that is, as I read the transcripts, I realized no matter what the detainees said, they would not be released. It was a total lose-lose situation for them. So we have an excerpt from one of those transcripts. And the fourth criteria was, while most of the things you'll find in the book are from Honouliuli, there are other excerpts from different sites too. Now, many of you know Honouliuli was the largest POW and internee camp here in the territory. At any one time, there might have been as many as 3,000 or 4,000 POWs on one side. And then on the other side, there might be 300 to 400 internees, the Japanese internees. So it was the largest of the camps. And people found out about it, as Beth mentioned, at about 2002. So it's been a long period of time before anybody even knew about it. But in addition to that, archaeologists have since found that there have been as many as 17 other detention centers, different places here in the territory or the state now. So we wanted to be sure that we included some excerpts from these places too. So for example, we might have something from the Kilauea military camp on the Big Island, or we might have something from Haiku camp on Maui, or we might have something from Kalahil Stockade, right, on Kauai. So this and some told we started to pull and pull, we started to tag and tag. After 2.5 years, we were realizing we had enough tags on these things for 5 books, and we're doing only 1, and a very small book. So what does this mean? It means revisiting all of those pieces again, and culling and pulling. And it was heartrending because sometimes we said, no, 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 we do want this one. And they said, no, but the other one is better. And so back and forth, back and forth. It was just great to have a partner doing this. Ultimately, the book that was published in 2018 is actually a book of 100 pages. So it's a very small book. It contains about 130 excerpts. And we organized it in 11 chapters, beginning with the bombing of Pearl Harbor and ending with a very short chapter about the resilient spirit of these individuals. Now, we didn't want this book to just be text. We wanted it to be a very visual rendition. So at the same time that we were doing the text excerpts, we're also looking for visuals. Some of them were historical archival photos, like the ones of Pearl Harbor, or the ones of Honouliuli camp. Others were headshots of the people who were interned. Others were illustrations that they themselves drew while they were in camps. Some others were photographs of the things that they made when they were in those camps. And then some were just impressionistic pieces that we want that captured a certain mood or a certain feeling, like the last chapter, right? The resilient spirit. We didn't want a face there. We wanted to capture that resilience and the talk about the importance of growth and survival. So we found a picture of a pair of young hands with a mound of dirt in it, and out of that mound of dirt is growing a single plant. It captured the feeling entirely that we wanted. So anyway, here we are collecting all these things. There are 11 chapters now. We also, because we are librarians, included a list of references. We got all the copyright permissions for things that have been published elsewhere. We had another section on the sources for all the visuals. And then one important thing we decided to add in with the help of other volunteers was a small section on thumbnail sketches of these individuals in the book. Because I think one of the things that really hit us as we're looking at this is not a single one of them was a criminal. These were individuals who had been like Shinto and Buddhist ministers and priests. These were the editors and writers of the Japanese language papers. These were the principals and teachers in the Japanese language schools. These were people that were very prominent businessmen in the community, and a few women as well. We wanted folks to know that in the thumbnail sketches. So finally we have all these pieces together, but it's still not a book, it's pieces. So now we really have a third author that's involved in this, and that was Joy Oshiro. She was contracted to be the layout artist. So what Joy did was to take these pieces that Claire and I had put together, and she actually created the magic that is the book that you see. She put the pictures and the text and the feelings that we thought were important right into that book. So we want to acknowledge Joy for her role in the whole thing. That was 2018 that we published this book. This is now 2025, right? 7 years have passed, and very frankly, neither one of us was looking very hard at the book in the interim years. And so when Nate and staff said we are reprinting the book, we're so happy. This time, though, we're coming to the book now, not as editors and writers so much, as readers with all of you. What are we seeing in the book that we think speaks to people? And so at this point, I want to have Claire share this, because, you know, working with Claire, I'm going to say this, Claire, is magic for me. And the reason for that is she so complements everything that I'm not. She is so right brain, you know, creative, intuitive, just knows the artistry of something. And I am so left brain, like, you know, this is a deadline, Claire. We got to meet this week. We got to get this copyright done, and I'll have to proofread this thing. So working with her is great. But she's a master reader and storyteller. So I'm going to ask her to take over the reading, which is the core of this presentation today. Okay, Claire?
Okay. I'll be sharing, as Vi said, some of the stories that we have in our book. Now, when we first were starting, Vi said, just look at the book and choose the stories that speak to you. Well, truthfully, as you can tell from my tags, every story spoke to me. So then I had to really listen and read and look to see which story spoke louder to me. And as Vi said, I'm a very right-brain person. So the stories I've chosen will speak of the feelings of the people that live through this experience. At this time, you're going to have to forgive me. I want to keep the voice of the people, so I will be reading quite a bit from my computer because they're the stories. It all begins on December 7th, 1941. Haru Tanaka. When I saw the planes that morning, I thought they were training with make-believe planes with red rising sun emblems painted on them. Then someone yelled out, "Senso, Senso, war, war." I saw a plane fall nearby and burn 2 houses. Fire started a third. One of the families had been asleep and ran out in night clothes. A woman had just come back from buying bread when she saw her house burst into flames. There was a lot of guja-guja, confusion, as people rushed to help. Soon the families were torn apart. Otokichi Muen Ozaki. I bid farewell to the faces of my sleeping children as I am taken prisoner into the cold night rain. After being ripped out from their homes with nothing, many with nothing but the clothes on their backs, they were taken to holding areas, detention centers, jails. Haru Tanaka. Most of the time we had no change of clothes. Nightly, we rinsed our things out and dried them under our bunks. Later, our friends were allowed to send us some clothes. Dan Toru Nishikawa. You know can read the magazine. You know can read the paper. You know can write the letter. Just eat and sleep, eat and sleep. Nothing to do. Gotta do something. Otherwise, gonna be crazy, you know, if you think about the family. Yet, even in these unspeakable conditions, which included hour-long, mind-numbing interrogation, there was kindness. Matsujiro Otani. The biggest problem was the washing place. We had been relocated with only the clothes on our backs. The only thing we could wash was our top and bottom underwear. But people who were ill, like myself, could not even do this. Fortunately, I had a friend, Mr. Muneki Obata of the Nippujiji newspaper, who washed our clothes for myself and other elderly, sick people. Every day after lunch, he would even help us to bathe. He took care of us until he was sent to the mainland, with the first group to be sent there. We were truly grateful for all the help he gave us. Finally, there became visiting times. Ryuzo Hirai. After spending 1 month as an internee at Sand Island, the military authorities announced that once a month family visitations will be allowed. Everyone went to the office to file a request for visitation and inform those at home of the good news. The internees, who had not a care of how they looked in camp, shaved their whiskers, combed their hair, and put on clean shirts and long trousers for the special day. On the visit day, about 30 internees marched toward the meeting place. The families entered the hall from the opposite side. I was sitting in the back when my daughter came running toward me. I was overwhelmed and speechless. 3 of us, with my daughter between us, sat on a bench. We were unable to speak for a few minutes. Finally, my wife said, "Every evening we go out on the porch and pray that you will be home soon." The 20 minutes passed so fast before the guard announced, "Time over." When I stood up, my daughter yelled out, "Let's go home together." We had tears in our eyes. Yasutaro Keiho Soga. After a long half year, I take my wife's hand into mine, and for at least a half day, I do not wash away her touch. And then came Honouliuli. Yoshitami Jack Tasaka. The camp was located at the bottom of a hollow surrounded by mountains. It used to be a sugarcane field, and the soil was fertile. The mountain slope was covered by shrubs such as kabe and koa, which provided a haunt for striped mosquitoes. At night, swarms came to attack us in the barracks. Although the barrack was covered by screens, there were plenty of openings where the amateur carpenters had nailed on 2x4 boards. As a result, we had no choice but to put up mosquito nets and sleep inside nets all year. Excuse me. When we squatted at the latrine at nights, we were bitten all over. When we stayed up outside talking at night, for it was hot and humid and hard to sleep, mosquitoes flew into our mouths without hesitation. We organized a kabe corps for the purpose of exterminating these mosquitoes. Mr. Shinzaburo Sumito, who was full of active energy, became the leader. The corps of about 20 volunteers went outside of the fence under the watch guard, holding Tommy guns to cut down the kabe and weeds. That was but one place why this place became called Jigokudani, Hell Valley. The food in camp. Yasutaro Keiho Soga. The food served was completely Western. For Japanese, there was too much fat and too few vegetables and fruits. I was accustomed to having fruit at every meal and liked vegetables. So the meals here pained me the most. Some spiteful guards forced us to eat what was left on our plates and watched us as we ate. They carefully monitored the amount of food we threw into the garbage can. If we threw out too much, they objected. There were instances when some ill-natured guards made whomever had thrown out whatever leftovers eat them right there in front of them. Otokichi Muen Ozaki. My elderly roommate wonders aloud, will that day come when I may have a bowl of tasty miso soup? Eventually, the internees were given jobs to do and earned coupons at 10 cents an hour. The various jobs included planting vegetables so they could have more fruits and vegetables in their diet. Still, life was dire. And so, these ingenious people kept themselves organized and occupied. Sam Nishimura. In camp, you get no future. You don't know whether you're going to be released. You have to make the most of yourself to keep yourself healthy. Just don't lose your mind. If you are occupied doing something, you will be able to withstand the agony. We used to make these rings. This was made from toothbrushes. We cut the strip with a hacksaw and put it in hot water. Get a round pole, put them on top, and make a shape. Then we had to sandpaper to grind it on. This was all done by file too. An excerpt from Takeaki Kodama. Wholeheartedly, I did shell work and made small cabinets using orange crates. After that, I carved Hawaiian-style bowls out of monkey pod wood. When materials became scarce, I learned to make guitars and mandolins with empty cans of ham. Playing the mandolin was like playing the guitar, since we used the same strings. Under Mr. Tsuneo Suzuki's patient instructions, I could play various tunes. These creative people also made toys for their children, trucks, and dolls. And for themselves, they were even able to make wine, which they enjoyed drinking. But in the camp, there was always an ever-present air of sorrow and loneliness. Sam Nishimura. I noticed that one guy had a 4-inch diameter square rock. Every day he kept rolling it, and finally it became a perfect baseball. He was just doing that every day until it became a round ball. When I asked him, "What are you going to do with that?" he said he was going to give it to my sweetheart. Just going at it every day, nothing else. Nobody talked with him. Ryuzo Hirai. Mr. Tetsuo Oi placed a photo of his wife next to his bed and prayed every day, "Dear, are you all right? You and the children, take care of your health." When an apple or orange was distributed at the mess hall, he would offer the item before his wife's photo before consuming it later. I asked my wife to send me a photo of her and my daughter. I placed a photo on the shelf and prayed day and night that they would be well in the days to come. Harry Urata. One day, I found an Issei at a corner of a room. He was in the same barrack with mine. He was crying while reading a letter. When I asked him why he was crying, he said he was crying because the military authorities informed him that his son was killed in action in Italy. At that moment, I had a peculiar feeling. I felt sympathy for him. And at the same time, I was indignant at the government. After a lifetime, the nightmare ended, and with it came thoughts. Sam Nishimura. Should anything happen again like that, I think I'll be able to withstand all the cruelty and anything that may come out, because after all, as long as you keep your mind straight and get along with the other guys, you just get along. Otherwise, if you're just stubborn, don't get along with people, not compatible. In other words, you be the loser. You have to just get along with the other guys. An excerpt from Yoshitami Jack Tasaka. Honouliuli was located about a 10-minute drive on a ragged road in a sugarcane field. The camp was situated in a large valley surrounded by small hills on all four sides. It was supposedly built to receive 15,000 to 20,000 Japanese prisoners, and it was decided that the internees would be detained here starting on March 2nd, 1943. While those who lost their family members in the attack on Pearl Harbor have been shouting, "Remember Pearl Harbor," I would like to shout, "Remember Honouliuli." We share these stories with you so that you do indeed remember Honouliuli. However, it wasn't only the conditions we want to remember, it is the resiliency of the people. They survived. At the end, to end this session of our presentation, one more story. Otokichi Muen Ozaki. Out in the yard, trenches had been dug and mounds of fresh dirt piled up in the empty lot outside of the fence. One side had been cleared and plowed, and beans, potatoes, and other vegetables planted, possibly because of a food supply problem. I began watching the bean plants grow while having my meals outdoors. Soon I was concentrated more on the plants than on my dirty eating utensils. My friend Mr. K once asked, "What's so interesting out there?" I replied, "Look at that bean plant. It has grown a few inches since the day we were thrown into this place. It has a determination to survive. The least we can do is to keep ourselves in good health and survive like the bean plant." From then on, the bean plant became a great comfort to Mr. K and me. At times, when I sank into despair and became edgy, the plant's climbing vines brightened my spirits and raised my hopes. And he wrote, "Even the bean plant is glad to be alive, stretching its tendrils up into the morning air." On inside back cover, we closed the book with a quote from Dan Toru Nishikawa about the importance of inner harmony throughout life, which he said can best be reflected in Ikebana. Gail Kobayashi, who sits there, created the arrangement pictured there. On the table today, Deb Shiroma, both who are volunteers here, created an arrangement to remind us of the need for inner harmony. Thank you. Bye. Your turn.
Yeah. I still tear up when she reads. I really do. You know, in the opening section of this book, we have an introductory chapter that kind of gives the context for the war, something about the experience on the West Coast, but largely what happened here in Hawaii, because this is the focus of the book. But in the very last portion of that chapter, we start to give some idea of why we feel a book like this is important. And can I take a few seconds just to read you a couple of sentences from that chapter? Claire and I wrote, "Telling the story goes beyond capturing the heroism and the dignity of those who were incarcerated. It really serves as a warning against injustice." You know, Roger Daniels, who was a historian of that period, wrote in a book called Prisoners Without Trial. This is a story about the Japanese Americans in World War II, and there's one sentence in his book that really captured our attention, and I quote it here. "It violated fundamental values of American democracy in the guise of fighting a war to preserve that democracy." End a quote. What irony. fighting a war to preserve freedom and democracy while imprisoning your own citizens. You know, I think the lesson we have to draw from this incarceration experience is the following. Civil liberties, civil rights are extremely fragile and very vulnerable. We were just talking about this, watching the events that are unfolding today in the US, but around the globe. And I think we all realize that the ugly issues of race, of bigotry, of prejudice, of political polarization, of power struggles are still very much threatening the pillars of democracy. So in creating this book, we hope we've made a very modest contribution to hearing the voices to carry the message that liberty is vital. You know, right now we have leaders that are trying to reshape history. And we have to remember that a very important part of this history is the voices that actually lived it. We have to preserve those voices and have those voices heard. We believe, Claire and I, that the lesson that we have to take from history is that all of us must be able to stand up against injustice in order for others to have the courage to follow. For those of you who already have the book, some of you already have it in hand, others of you are purchasing it, much aloha. There are several things that Claire and I would like to hope you will do with the book. The first thing is, please share the stories with your friends and family. Many of them may not know very much about this experience. And for those of you who are descendants of the incarcerated individuals, this is part of your history. The second important thing is, I think we have educators in this room and maybe online. Please, no matter what level you are doing things with learners, find ways to share some of these stories. And finally, for all of us, we should all be storytellers. We all have important stories to share. It might be with your families. It might be with larger audiences, because some of you here actually publish. The important thing is, it doesn't matter the format. It can be a scrapbook. It can be a personal diary. It can be a video recording that you're keeping up. Or it can be a book that you're writing. The important thing is, your stories matter. Our stories all matter. Because history is made up of story. And story is what makes history come alive. So let's all participate in that. We're going to end right now, before the book signing, with Claire just doing a few words of aloha. So I'm going to turn it back to her. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, you know, those who know me, you know my few words going to be really long. You know, we have to say this book really, Vi talked a lot about Claire and I, or Vi and I, but really, it couldn't have been done without a whole group of people who gave us their unconditional support. The volunteers at the Resource Center at the time would drop whatever they were doing if we needed help. Or the JCC staff at that time would give us the unconditional moral support. If we needed a laugh, they would be there for us to laugh. To me, when I started looking at this picture, it came together sort of like a quilt. I'm kind of a sort of a quilter, so I tend to think that way. It started with Jane, who gave us the fabric of the quilt. It intrigued us, fabric intrigued us. Now, when we make a quilt, we need a pattern. So the pattern really came from Vi. She's our left brain person. She's the one who came up with the pattern of what this quilt, this book would look like. The volunteers gave us the pieces, helped us create the blocks, the chapters of the book. And most importantly, the thread that held us together. You know, when I was thinking about this, I thought, thread. What's so important about thread? Thread doesn't seem to be much. It's like in the background on a quilt. But you know what? If we didn't have the thread in a quilt, what would we have? Pieces. The thread holds everything together. And our thread was Carol Hayashino, who was the CEO of JCCH at the time. She held us together by keeping us going. She also got the funding for the book. She found a book layout artist, Joy, and a publisher, and. She was our thread. So thank you very much to all who helped us create this quilt book. We also need to acknowledge, as Vi did earlier, to thank the JCCH who published, this is the second publishing of the book at this time. Thank you again for being here. As a small token of our appreciation for being here, we have a bookmark for you. When I created it, I wanted it to reflect the book with somber colors and yet give it hope. In the spirit of the book, I made it with only things that I had around my house. Okay, those of you who know me, I got plenty of stuff around my house, but I chose the somber ones, okay? And I wanted to make a tsuru to show hope. The origami paper that I tried just didn't do it, and so I chose to use newspaper. I tried to find only positive stories to make the tsurus with. It's really hard, you know, nowadays to find only positive stories to make, but I found positive stories. There are a few black tsurus, and that may seem dismal, but it is from a photograph of the lantern floating ceremony that was held in remembrance of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and so I thought it appropriate. Beth will take the boxes that we have in the back, so if you want, take one. Okay, one more thing. I'm sorry. Oh, one more thing. On display next door are some of the items that were made by the internees. The toothbrush rings, some of the toys, some of the bowls that were donated to JCCH by their family. If you want, take time to go and look at it. Okay, now I promise. Thank you very much. That's the last. Beth?
Thank you so much, Claire and Vi. We feel so fortunate that not only are they gifted writers and organizers, they're also great speakers. So please, let's give them another round of applause. I'd also like to mention that around the same time that this book was being created, JCCH also started working on other resources, including documentaries, The Untold Story and Life Behind Barbed Wire. These are accessible via our website as well as our YouTube channel. And there's so many other things, and we welcome you to visit the Tokioka Heritage Resource Center at any time. Although it does say by appointment, you can always reach me and I can show you around. I'd also like to thank our staff today, Lisa there, helping us with the live stream. Jamie Lee checked you all in, and our gift shop manager is there, Ali Kurnishi. And so the recording of today's live stream will be available on our YouTube channel in a few days or so. And we would really appreciate it if you can share your thoughts about today's presentation. We have a QR code in the back so that you can fill out a short survey. And I also want to give a little plug for some of our upcoming events. On September 20th, if you're a JCCH member, we're having our annual membership meeting. This year will be very special. We'll be having a panel discussion with Ann Teranishi and Logan Narikawa, speaking about some of the thoughts we had today about, being Japanese American in today's world and how we can all have a voice going forward. And with that note, I would really like to emphasize how important it is that we embrace our mission, and we just want to continue to engage with all of you. So thank you very much for attending.